Alright, so we're going to cover kind of a lot of ground today. We're going to talk about variables, sequences, and if statements or conditionals in Bitsy. So my plan for today basically is, as of right now, we have hearts that you can pick up, and every time your little character comes and picks them up, it says your hit points went up. But there's a couple problems with this. The first problem is that we don't have any variable assigned for hit points, so our player doesn't have hit points that can come up or down. And I also want to make it so that every time I interact with one of these hearts, something different happens each time. So let's get started with how to make all of that happen, because that's kind of a lot to cover. So let's start with going to our inventory, because basically I need to make a variable for hit points. So I'm gonna just basically take the variable that they have as the default, and I'm just gonna kind of repurpose it, and I'm gonna call it HP for hit points. And I'm gonna give it, let's say we start out with 5 hit points. So maybe our maximum was 10, but we can't really set a maximum here. But okay, so we have hit points. So then we want to say when our hit points go up, we want to increase our hit points when this dialog option happens. So let's go over to items and variable actions, change variable value. So this is going to be HP equals HP plus 1. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, so we have created a variable HP, which is our hit points, and we've set that value to 5. Now, what this dialog script is doing is every time we encounter this line of dialogue, which, if you remember, happens when we interact with one of these hearts, every time this plays right after it, which means our hit points are set to the value that our hit points just was, plus 1 more. So if we set our hit points to 5, then our hit points is going to be set to 5 plus 1, which is 6. And then actually, let's give us a way to show off what our hit points are. So the way that we can do that, so we should go to click out of this. Let's go create a new dialog underneath here. And let's say, okay, so let's see how that goes. And basically, so what I want to have happen is I want our hit points to go up every time we interact with a heart. So we're going to say that your hit points are going up to clue the player in on what's happening. We're going to raise the hit points, and then we're going to tell the player how many hit points they have, just to see if this is working. So let's press play and test it out. Awesome, so it looks like that worked. But here's another problem we have right here. There's no space in here, and you know what, I actually want to put this on another layer. So why don't I stop this? So one solution is just to put a space right here. Let's see what that does. Okay, so that works, that accomplishes what we want. But if we wanted that to go on a new line, if we wanted to have to enter to see that line of dialogue, then we would do something different. We would add a page break. So one way you can do that is by putting the page break in here. So you can press add, go to dialogue, and then go to page break, and then you can just bring this up to where you want it. Or the other way you can do it, if we look at the code, so this is how this is all actually written out. So you can do this sort of visual coding method, or you can click show code, and it'll show you like what you're typing behind the scenes. So it's the exact same thing we just had. Your hit points went up, and then the code HP equals HP plus 1. And then there's this new thing that we put in here, PG. PG in these little brackets means page break. So anywhere that you insert this, it's basically just like pressing the enter key. So it'll go to a new dialog box. You have to press enter to get to that dialog. And then it says you have, say, HP, hit points. And then say HP is just telling Bitsy, hey, in this section that we've said right here, spit out whatever value HP is right now. So that's kind of a lot, but let's play it and just see what it does. Your hit points went up. You have 6 hit points. Okay, so we did have to press enter. So that's exactly what we wanted. Now we have 7 hit points, and this should put us at 8. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? Like just increasing your hit points but it does take a little bit of coding knowledge. If you didn't understand that, this would be a good time to pause and rewatch the first part of this tutorial, but we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit more complicated. So I actually want to create something called a sequence. And the reason I want to create a sequence is because I want one thing to happen when I interact with this heart, and then I want a different thing to happen when I interact with the next heart and the next one. I want to go on kind of like a cycle with different responses. Let's go down. So I actually don't remember how to write the code for sequence, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to lists, sequence list, and then that's put a sequence list in here, and then I can click back on show code to see what that looks like in the code interface. So what it's done basically is it's put an open bracket, sequence, and then it has two options here for us to fill in, and then a close bracket. So what I can do, what we've already written works beautifully for one of the sequence items. So I'm just gonna basically, so I just copied and pasted that in here as my first thing. And then let's create two more of these so that I have one for each heart I have on screen, but you can have as many items in your sequence list as you want. So let's say your hit points went up. So basically I want this to be almost exactly the same for every one of these guys, because I want your hit points, I want this code in all three of them to make your hit points go up, and then I want to tell the player every time how many hit points they have. I just want this first part of the text to change. So the first time it says your hit points went up, the second time I want to say your hit points went up again, and then the last time I want to say again, wow. So just to have some kind of cutesy stuff in here that's a little bit different. So let's try and just see what this does. So your hit points went up, you have 6 hit points. And in the order in these doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which heart I collect. So let's collect this one this time and see what happens. Your hit points went up again. So we get the second option. You have 7 hit points. And then the last one, your hit points went up again. Wow. You have 8 hit points. Great, so that sequence worked perfectly. So now I want to create a condition. Actually, let me add some more hearts to the scene, just to give us a lot of different little hearts to work with. And let's say I don't want the player to be able to collect any more hearts after they have 10 hit points. So I'm going to add a condition. And that's written the same way that the sequence is written, basically. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing we did earlier and just add it to the bottom. So go to lists, go to branching list. And then I'm going to see what it looks like in here. So it's exactly the same as the sequence. But this is the difference. So what this is saying is, if something, then this will happen. If anything else happens, then this will happen. So basically, I just need to set this criteria to, if our hit points are 10 or greater, then you can't collect any more health points. If anything else, which means it's less than 10, you can. So we already know that this sequence that we had is basically what we want to have happen if it is less than 10, because we do want to be able to pick up our hearts. We do want to have these cute little dialogue options go. So I'm just going to paste that right in there. And then in this part, I'm going to lay out my conditions. So we said, if you have, if your hit points are greater than or equal to 10. So how we write that is, in these brackets here, we just put our variable. If HP is greater than or equal to 10, then maybe we'll just give a line of dialogue that says, you have full health already. So let's see what that does. Your hit points went up, you have 6. Your hit points went up again, you have 7. Your points went up again, wow, you have 8. Your hit points went up again, wow, you have 9. So it looks like that last item in our sequence is just going to keep going forever, and that's okay. You have 10 hit points. You have full health already. Great. And then we can see our hit points aren't going up because if we look back at our code, we had to explicitly tell it with this line of code, HP equals whatever HP was plus 1. So this line of code is increasing our hit points. So if we don't have this line of code up here, then our hit points aren't increasing. They're staying at 10 for forever. So yeah, so this is if we are at full health, and this is if we are not at full health. So we covered kind of a lot of ground there, but hopefully this was not too difficult or too confusing. I definitely recommend watching this again if you feel like you need a little bit more time with conditionals or sequences, but also just playing around with the coding, just like, so hiding the code and then clicking add and then going down all these different options to just see what is available to you and clicking on different things that you don't know what they are, and showing what code it makes. That also will help a lot just to see what's available to you. But hopefully, like, this bit of information that you got in this tutorial is pretty much all you're going to need to make a pretty complex game with not a ton of coding knowledge.